Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. My name's Hannah. On this channel, I post a lot of anti-MLM content. I'll link a playlist here and down below. This is my big anti-MLM playlist. Over 100 videos on it right now. Lots of horror story videos, MLM top fails videos, MLM Zoom calls, MLM deep dives. So if any of that content does sound interesting to you, I would love it if you consider subscribing and liking this video. Those things really help to support my channel and I appreciate you so much for doing that. As I'm sure you already know, today I'm bringing you another MLM horror stories video. These are people's personal experiences that they have had with an MLM company that they have chosen to write out and send to me. If you have your own story you want to send in, the instructions for how to do that are in the description box below. Let's go ahead and jump into these stories. This story says, "Hi Hannah, I wanted to share an MLM near miss horror story that I didn't even realize had almost happened until I watched the story about the Kirby vacuum door-to-door sales rep who stayed at a poor woman's house for 4 hours. Actually, it was my parents who dodged the bullet, with my help of course. In a way, it makes me giggle now, but it was awkward when it happened. I had no idea that this company was an MLM, so when I saw that story, I had to tell you. You're more than welcome to share this with your subscribers if you want. Let me break it down. Back in November of 2012, when this particular event happened, my dad was nearing the end of his 5-year battle with cancer. My sister and I were at my parents' house waiting for the hospice nurse to arrive, and needless to say, it was an extremely emotional time for my family. Absolutely. You see, Dad had gone to his oncologist appointment that morning, and after discussing the results of the latest round of blood tests with his doctor, he decided that he was no longer going to continue treatment and opted for hospice care during his final days at home. After spending some precious time with my dad, I had stepped outside to get some fresh air and answer a phone call. As I was talking on my cell phone, a red SUV pulled up my parents' driveway and parked beside the house. Let me add that my mom and dad's house is out in the country and situated at the end of a long, winding, and hilly driveway, so no one ever pulls up to the house by accident. Anyone who is ever there is there intentionally, and not by accidentally making a wrong turn and needing a place to turn around. Anyway, with this in mind, I ended my phone call and walked over to the woman to greet her, because I was assuming that she was from hospice. I'll give you 3 guesses at what company actually employed her, and the first 2 don't count. If you guessed Kirby Vacuum, you would be a winner. The sales lady smiled warmly at me as I approached her, and as she got out of the car, a fresh flood of tears began falling from my eyes, because I'm thinking that she and I are going to go into my parents' home and she is going to begin the end-of-life care for one of the most important people in my life. Nope, that's not what happened. This poor lady is only slightly put off by a stranger who is bawling. She looked a little puzzled but didn't ask me what was wrong. She then asks me if this was my house and I told her that it wasn't. She asked if she could talk to the homeowners because she wanted to do a demonstration of her amazing Kirby vacuum. I said, "Ma'am, this is my parents' house and I don't think they would be interested in your vacuum right at this time." She tells me that it would only take a little bit of time, maybe an hour or so, and that if I could introduce her to my mom, she would appreciate it. Let me add that I was 36 years old at this point, so she wasn't dealing with a child who was just being contrary. I repeated to her that they would not be interested in a vacuum demonstration, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. She asked me if she could come back in a day or 2 and she could get my parents' phone number so that she would call them and schedule an appointment with them. This is when I told her that I had mistakenly thought she was from hospice when she pulled up, that my dad had stopped his cancer treatment just a few hours prior, and that was who we were waiting for, and under no uncertain terms would I allow her to pester them about something as trivial as a vacuum cleaner. The smile absolutely drained off of her face. She mumbled an apology, some condolences, and couldn't get back to her car to leave quickly enough. Dad lived another 5 days after that, and I'm happy to report that she never tried to come back or get in contact with my mom. We were lucky that this particular sales rep wasn't too invested in making a sale at that particular address that day or any of the following days based on how tenacious they can be in all of the other stories that people have shared. I'd like to think that she was embarrassed, and I'd also like to think that maybe it made her pause to reflect on the wisdom of her career choice. Maybe not though. A girl can hope, right? That's my parents' short and sweet near miss MLM horror story. Feel free to share if you'd like. Keep doing what you're doing. It's a great thing, and I thank you for taking the time to share the truth about these awful companies and their predatory behaviors. Your story really highlights how MLM reps don't consider what other people are going through when they're trying to pitch them. And in the case of a Kirby rep, a huge strategy of theirs is driving up to the houses of individuals and knocking on the door and welcoming themselves in. That's a very personal way to go about a sales pitch. It's not like you're just in public trying to get contact information. It's not like you're just cold messaging somebody on social media. No, you are showing up to their door and entering into whatever situation is going on in that house. And this story really highlights all the different kinds of situations that a Kirby rep could find themselves in. She's just going about her day, doo-dee-doo, driving up to different houses, doing demonstrations, and she's unintentionally being incredibly disrespectful. Your family is experiencing arguably one of the most difficult moments of their entire life. And in comes an MLM sales rep who has no idea how insensitive and disrespectful she is being. And it's kind of a really tough situation because you can't know what all these strangers are going through. You don't know what you're entering into when you drive up to someone's house. And so to a certain extent, you can't really place the blame on her for just jumping right into her pitch because she doesn't know what's going on. But at the same time, there were signs, there were social cues. You're already outside on the porch, you're on the phone, you're crying, you're upset, and she chose in that moment to completely bypass that, completely gloss over it, didn't ask what was wrong. The first thing out of her mouth should have been, "Is now a good time?" And you would have said, "No, it's not," and she should have left immediately. And the point being that we've made 100 times over on this channel is that there are no limits, there are no boundaries, in a sense that like genuine human to human interaction is completely missed, because that's not the goal. They're not there to get to know you in your life situation. They're there to make a pitch and to sell you something. And it's a bit insane how zoned in MLM reps can get on that goal, that they are blind to all the super obvious other cues, and that they don't even have the human decency to check in with that other person. I'm really sorry that this happened to you. This was the most inappropriate time for this to be happening. I'm also really sorry for your loss. But at the top of your story, you said that you can look back on it and it makes you giggle now, so that's good. This is a super awkward story that was not okay at the time. I mean, it's still not okay now, but at least you can look back on it, and that it helps you understand a little bit better what that person's frame of mind was when she approached you. This story says, "Hey there, my MLM horror story isn't much of a wild ride as other people's, but it is definitely horror in a literal gore way." I'm a little bit scared. When I was about 12 years old, my oldest brother graduated from high school. He went into the military, but his childhood friend went to college to be a pharmacist. The friend spent the summer before his first college semester trying to earn money to put towards school. At the time, we didn't know it was an MLM, but he had joined Cutco. Cutco, and you said it's like a gory story? Now I'm actually really scared. Our mom, wanting to help out this person who spent a lot of time at our house growing up, agreed to hear his pitch. She was one of the first he pitched to. I had nothing better to do, so I sat and I listened too. You could tell from the start that he was nervous. Things were going fine. He stumbled in his pitch here and there, but nothing major. He did the classic penny cutting with the scissors, which was actually kind of cool. When he got to demonstrating the knife, it started out fine. I guess as he got into the swing of things, he got braver and started looking at us while talking. You know, instead of the very sharp object in his hand. Next thing we know, instead of talking, he was screaming. Oh no, oh god, ooh. He had almost entirely severed his finger. A lot of blood got on our dining room table, the floor, and his clothes. My mom quickly ran to the kitchen to get a towel. She wrapped it up, his blood now on her as well, and we drove him to the hospital about 7 minutes away. Once his parents arrived, we headed home and cleaned up the blood. My mom felt bad, so she purchased a set of knives and the scissors. She actually still uses them to this day, just not the one that he cut himself with. He's doing fine now. His finger was reattached with no complications. He quit Cutco shortly thereafter, became a pharmacist, and is married with 1 kid. So happily ever after, at least. Oh god. So Cutco is one of those that super heavily targets high school kids, college kids, and pitches it as a summer job, a summer internship, or something super misleading. So I'm not surprised whatsoever that he found that opportunity kind of in the interim between his school years. But like you said, the bright side of this story is that he did go to school. He is a pharmacist, which is a fantastic job. And I'm so happy to hear that Cutco was a really tiny blip in his history. But oh my god, he cut his finger off basically. That is so cringy. Ooh, I hate anything to do with like blood, guts, gore, hospitals, medical emergencies, like ugh. I mean, at least the knives were really sharp and effective. I'm going to hell for saying that. This makes me wonder how common this story is. Of course, it's the first time I've heard of a Cutco rep actually injuring themselves while doing a demonstration, but you're so right. What they're selling is knives. What they are selling is something really dangerous if mishandled. This has to be more common than just one guy accidentally injuring himself, right? How many Cutco reps out there get seriously injured because they're young and they're flustered and they're doing their first demo and accidents happen? Like, this is something that I never thought about before, but it makes perfect sense. Of course, this has the risk to happen. There have got to be more people out there who have done something like this too. This is a pretty solid MLM horror story in the literal gory way. This one says, "Hi Hannah, I recently came across your YouTube channel and I honestly wish I had this information before I got roped into Mon 8. I apologize in advance for the long story. It may not seem like a horror story as I personally feel it's not too bad in comparison to the ones I've seen on your page, but I still wanted to share. If you do decide to post this story, please keep me anonymous. Around March of 2020, I got a hey love message from a friend I hadn't spoken to since 2016. Of course, it didn't take long for her to bring up the whole business opportunity of Mon 8. At the time, I thought this would be a good idea for me since I was barely 2 years into the military and was still a low rank while trying to help my mom and siblings out during their financial struggles. I had also seen some of the girls I went to boot camp with posting about the company, so I thought some extra income wouldn't hurt, right? Wrong. I ended up taking from my savings and buying the $350 pack, which she had advertised to me as a sale for its value, and then immediately told me about all the meetings I had to attend. I tried to explain to her that I wouldn't always be able to attend the meetings due to my work schedule involving 12-hour shifts, tiring physical labor, I was an aircraft mechanic, and the fact that we were in different time zones. This is when she told me the whole quote, "There are mothers with 3+ kids that make time for the meetings, so if they can do it, so can you." And this was the first red flag. It became a regular thing for her to call me on weekends, during work, and immediately after I got out of work about joining these meetings. When I say immediately after work, I'm talking about literally during the drive from my squadron to my room. I was finally able to join a meeting in which I felt uneasy. They were talking about recruiting people and making a plan about exactly what to tell them in order to have them join as either market partners or VIPs. After the meeting, she called me personally to hear my plan, and I told her I had none. That's when she told me that she felt as if I wasn't taking our business seriously because I've missed nearly every meeting, and that if I didn't know where to begin, I should start with texting my mother. That was after I had told her that my mother was struggling financially. I ended up having my boyfriend sign up as a VIP member just to show some progress and get her to back off a little, but she didn't. It honestly got worse. The attitude and anger she started addressing me with, along with the multiple phone calls that I was receiving during working hours, I started to feel very stressed out, feeling like I wasn't doing enough and feeling guilty for even trying to have anyone else be a part of this. That's right, because your goal, obviously, in an MLM is to recruit other people, but if you yourself are not really fully in it, you are seeing the red flags, you don't think it's a good idea, then how can you possibly be expected to recruit other people into it as well? I know that some people still do it because money is the motive, but unless you are fully bought into whatever they're selling, it's going to be very difficult for you to pitch it to other people and try and sell it to them. At that point, I also told her about the stress I was under due to an injury, the same injury that ultimately led to my medical discharge from the military, and how I might need time away from the company as it was causing me to become more stressed than I could handle. She told me I was making excuses and how others who are going through worse still find a way to push forward and make rank. I hate that argument of like, other people have it worse. Who is she to define whose situation is worse than the other? And even still, by her saying that other people have it worse, she's therefore invalidating your own experiences. And that doesn't make for a very good leader. That doesn't serve to motivate people into doing what you want them to do. But at the end of the day, she's trying to encourage you to keep pushing forward regardless of whatever it is that you're going through, because her paycheck depends on it. That was the last straw. At this point, she had bombarded me with phone calls for months in the middle of work and put me down for missing them. She disregarded my family's financial struggle for the sake of making rank, and now she was telling me that my mental and physical health issues were just excuses. I ended up ghosting her and becoming inactive in the company as she had never told me how to cancel, and I didn't want any communication with her. Eventually, someone ended up joining as as a market partner under me. I honestly don't know how because I never posted my link, but I've been trying to find this girl so that I can at least try to stop her from making the same mistake as me. The problem is I don't know who she is. I apologize for the lengthy story. I just wanted to let people know that no one is safe from MLM schemes, not even service members. Zeke, you are so loud. You're being so loud. Yes, you are. You're being so loud. So you're saying you're not sure how this person found you or how they signed up? That doesn't completely surprise me because if you want to join Monat but you don't know who to sign up under, you just click the join now button on the Monat website, and I think you can search by name or by zip code and you can find people in your area. So maybe you came up on this list of suggested people for this person and she chose you for whatever reason. I'm wondering if you still have access to the back office. I think you should be able to go in there and see the name of the person who joined under you. I think you can see your downline members there and you can check up on their progress and stuff, like a big brother kind of situation. Don't quote me on that, but I think that might be an option if you're looking for this person's name, and then maybe typing that name into Instagram or something and seeing who comes up and seeing if they are in Monat. But that's kind of crazy that you just went inactive because you didn't want to go through the hassle of actually deactivating the account and someone just fell into your downline. I'm sure there's lots of people that would love for that to happen to them, but maybe that would be a good idea to try and figure out who it is if you can, and just letting her know like, hey, you signed up under me, but just so you know, I'm not actually active in the company and here's why. This story says, hey Hannah, I just recently discovered your channel and I've been binge watching your videos. I love your content and you seem like such a good-hearted person. That's so sweet. Wow. My story is pretty short, but I just thought it shows the length that people involved in these MLMs are willing to go. They are literally willing to pitch their product anywhere, anytime, and to anyone, even if it's not appropriate or respectful. Absolutely, we know this. Time and time again, MLM reps have proven themselves to be completely disrespectful in their timing and in the ways that they go about pitching their products, so I can't wait to see what this is all about. My story took place a few years ago. I work as a police officer in an area on the way to Las Vegas. I made a traffic stop late one night, like around midnight. The vehicle was a van that had a male driver, his wife in the passenger seat, and their kids in the back seat. I honestly can't remember what the stop was for, but I know that I just gave them a warning. I went through my introduction and asked where they were going. They told me they were going to Las Vegas for a Young Living convention. I like to make small talk during my stops and I had no idea about Young Living or MLMs at all at this time. So I asked what the convention was about. The lady's eyes lit up. She then began giving me a whole full-out presentation while on the side of the highway in the middle of the night with her whole family in the vehicle. She asked me all kinds of questions like if I had used essential oils and if I was really happy doing such a dangerous job. Honestly, I should have just lied and said that I don't use oils, but I didn't. She continued to subtly bash my job and being in this line of work as a female. She expressed how great hers was with Young Living. During this whole time, her husband and kids were quiet while she spoke because they were probably used to it at this point, you know? Her poor family, they're like, Brenda, pitching her oils again. Here she goes. Even the police officer pulling us over is gonna get the spiel. At the end of the stop, she gave me a bunch of pamphlets and her contact info, and I took it just to be polite. I did look into it out of curiosity because I did use essential oils in a diffuser at home. As a very cheap person, I remember seeing the prices and thinking, yeah, no thanks. I never contacted her and I'm glad that I never went down that rabbit hole. Thanks for informing the public about this and helping so many people. Keep fighting the good fight. Exhibit A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That nobody is off limits. Nobody is safe from being pitched an MLM, even when you're being pulled over in the middle of the night. That's what I think is the most entertaining part about your whole story, is that you are on duty in a professional and highly necessary job within our communities, okay? And she has the audacity to look at you and be like, you're a woman police officer. Don't you want to be home? Don't you want to be home selling oils instead? It almost feels like there's a little bit of a sexist undertone to that comment that I don't like. And you know what? Yeah, being a police officer is a very difficult and sometimes dangerous job. It's not for everybody. But it never ceases to amaze me that MLM reps just automatically assume that everyone hates their job, that everyone is looking for a better alternative, and that everybody does want to be home. And this applies to all people in all types of professions. It doesn't really matter where you work or what you do. There's an MLM rep out there assuming that you're miserable and that you would be better off sitting at home, messaging people on Instagram, seeing if they want to buy your gimmicky product. Let this be a PSA. It is possible for people to be happy and fulfilled in their jobs, and not everybody wants to be in a pyramid scheme. This one says, hey Hannah, thank you so much for the work that you do, bringing light to what an insidious and harmful industry the MLM world is. I was listening to another story that you shared, and the writer mentioned how anyone can be taken advantage of by this industry, sometimes even when they don't choose to sign up for the opportunity. And after hearing that, I knew I had to share my experience with you. I believe that knowing is half the battle, and had I known what I do now about the horrors of MLMs, I like to think I would have seen what was happening sooner and gotten far away from the situation I was in that ended up being devastating to myself and many others. I hope that by sharing my story, I can help someone else know their worth and stand up for themselves. I completely agree with you that knowledge is power, and oftentimes after you consume a lot of this content, you hear a lot of these stories, you learn a little bit more about the industry, it becomes so much easier to spot, and you're arming yourself with that knowledge, with that information to hopefully avoid these situations in the future. For most of my career, I worked in the service industry as a restaurant manager. I worked my way up from a part-time server, so when I heard that an upscale restaurant nearby was hiring for a new manager, I was excited to advance my career. I began my role there and gave my all, working 70 plus hours a week. As the manager insisted that being a salaried employee, I should show my work ethic by making my job my entire life. Looking back, there were so many red flags, but at the time I believed them when they said that we were a family, and I wanted to pull my share of the responsibilities to hopefully move up within a company that I cared a lot about. A few months into my new job, there started being issues with payroll. The brothers who owned the restaurant company had begun the process of opening a third restaurant, and it seemed like there were so many opportunities on the horizon, but I was told that money was tight due to the rapid growth of the company and that things would be just fine soon. I deposited a check and a couple of days later was purchasing groceries when my card was declined. I checked my banking app and saw that my paycheck had bounced. I had to forgo my groceries and wait a week for them to replace the money that I was owed. I convinced myself this was just growing pains, and I continued working for the company as my manager insisted that family stuck around when things got hard and that they would make it up to us in the end. I should have left immediately. Vendors who sold us ingredients and services began letting me know that we owed them as well and asking where their money was. My staff began having their checks bounced too, and against the company's policy, I tried my best to pay employees who were facing eviction or needing medical care for their families out of our deposits and the safe. Sometimes I'd give them money out of my own pocket, as it was heartbreaking knowing that my staff was suffering even though I was well and I wanted to help where I could. The brothers who owned the restaurants continued to gaslight us all, telling us that it was going to get better and that they weren't paying themselves from the profits, even though they were taking trips with their families, having extravagant dinners for their friends that they would force us to serve in their restaurants, and investing in a new liquor line in their name. A local news station ended up running a story on TV about how bad things had gotten and how employees were not being paid, but still nothing changed. I figured that since they were making up the money eventually, and since I was a manager, it was my job to stick it out so that my employees could keep their jobs. One day I came into work to be told that we would be hosting an event to celebrate the wife of one of the owners. She had, quote, reached a huge milestone in her business and was being awarded with a custom car to celebrate, and everyone was expected to cheer her on during this, quote, momentous accomplishment. We spent the whole day preparing fancy appetizers, getting the restaurant set up for the event, and then passing appetizers and drinks to her guests who came in to witness this incredible feat she had worked so hard for. Imagine my surprise when the award she received was a gaudy Jeep wrapped entirely in It Works advertisements. They forced us to applaud her as she jumped in it and waved like a middle-aged beauty queen. And you also included a photo of this Jeep, so here it is. This was the big award that this It Works rep got for reaching some kind of rank, I'm assuming. And you and your staff at the restaurant are hosting this celebration for her. We spent a whole day without being paid to put on a show for this woman who had just come back from Disney with her family to get a car that she surely was having to pay for herself, all to keep up her image. You worked this event without being paid? That can't be legal, right? If you're at your place of work doing your work duties, you should be paid. Am I wrong? She walked around bragging about how much money she made and how her lifestyle was so extravagant due to her hard work, while the employees of her husband were unable to buy groceries because he wasn't paying us. It was disgusting. That's right. That is such an awkward dynamic. The people that are hosting this event, serving this event, those people are struggling. Those people aren't being paid. And here you are working an unpaid event for your boss's wife. That is so awkward and so wrong. I ended up being fired from that job after speaking up to a member of corporate about how the executive chief they'd fired recently, who had been grooming and sexually harassing minors, shouldn't be allowed to party with the owners in the establishment anymore, but that's a story for another time. The Hun wife used the struggling servers and bartenders as another opportunity for herself, as she encouraged them to make money by joining her in her amazing opportunity. It is so upsetting to think that a few of them took her up on it out of desperation, only to, I'm sure, be scammed all over again. The restaurant group ended up going out of business in 2020, blaming it on the pandemic, even though they were heading towards closure for years. But it was still a great thing to see. The Hun ended up starting a bakery, and as much as I wish I could forget that whole family ever existed, I check the Facebook page every once in a while out of morbid curiosity. She is still using the outside business as a way to further her MLM involvement. I truly hope the people who prey upon others for their own personal gain get a big dose of karma in the future, but the whole experience taught me to never put a job first ever again, and to run the second a boss refers to their employees as a family. I ended up getting a way better job that has paid me on time every time, and I'm way happier now. But every once in a while, I think about what a dumpster fire we all lived through and hope that those people have the worst day. Thank you so much for reading my long-winded rant and to bring light to these awful people's business practices. I hope that someone who is questioning whether or not to give an insidious job another chance takes this as a sign that they deserve so much better. This story is really interesting because it very much is an MLM adjacent type story. You didn't join the MLM, you didn't get pitched the MLM. Well, maybe you did if she was preying on all the workers there that night. But even still, you kind of came in contact with this industry. And even in that really short encounter, I'm sure you got a pretty good taste as to what it's all about. Praising people's achievements with these over-the-top events and the toxic positivity and the love bombing that comes along with that. The overwhelming desire and need to continually be trying to recruit new people, even when it's an evening dedicated to celebrating your success. She can't even do that. Part of that event was consumed by her pitching the restaurant staff. Like, when is enough enough? When are you done? When are you successful enough that you really can take a step back and enjoy all of the freedoms that has provided you? And the answer is you don't really get to. And I think that this story highlights that. And this story makes me wonder about how the MLM industry and the fact that this woman was really successful in it kind of rubbed off on her husband, on the restaurant owner. Because it seems like some of those characteristics of MLMs kind of bled into the restaurant industry, in the sense that they call your workplace a family, and that they're really encouraging you to spend 70 plus hours a week working, and that your paycheck isn't always on time and it's a little sketchy, like it seems like the finances might not be super stable. All of those things could also apply to MLMs. Hi, Cooper. So it does kind of make me wonder if those things were kind of normalized in the restaurant owner's mind and how he let that kind of bleed over into his legitimate restaurant business. Super interesting story. Thank you for sending it in. Hi, Ziki. I got 2 kitties. You want to come up here? Hi. I thought we were so close to getting both cats in the frame at the same time. I don't think that's ever happened on my channel before. Are you just gonna sit right there? Is that a happy spot for Zeke? Okay. This story says, "Hi Hannah, I just discovered your YouTube channel and I've been binging your anti-MLM content for days. Thank you so much for bringing more awareness to this important topic. My story isn't as horrific as many of the ones I've watched so far, but although very brief, my experience was still very eye-opening for me. I've known about MLMs essentially being scams since I was a teenager. None of what I knew sat right with me. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. When you sell something, you would want less competition, not more. So why would you want to recruit people to sell the same exact products as you? I knew what a pyramid scheme was and how closely MLMs are to the legal definition of one. Needless to say, as a woman in her early 20s looking to start my own business from home, I simply wasn't interested and I avoided all MLMs like any other scam out there. Besides, I already knew exactly what kind of business I wanted to start. A bug farm! A bug farm? I have pet reptiles and many of them only eat live insects. To cut down on my own pet food costs, I started started farming crickets, caterpillars, and other creepy crawlies for my scale babies. Hold on. I mean, this makes perfect sense. Like, of course there's bug farms, right? Lots of reptiles eat live insects. For example, my 5th grade teacher had a bearded dragon, and every Monday she would come in with live crickets from the pet store. So yeah, it does make sense that you would have to like grow them, farm them, for the purpose of feeding the reptiles. But I can honestly say I have never even thought about that until this exact moment. This is probably the most unique type of small business I've ever heard of. It didn't take long before these bugs were reproducing way faster and in much higher quantities than what my animals could consume. Naturally, I started selling the extras to my reptile keeping friends, who then introduced me to reptile breeders and people with large reptile collections, people who needed bugs in large quantities. Things were taking off. I did the math and realized that this had a lot of potential to be extremely lucrative. All I needed to do to break into the wholesale market was become a legitimate registered sole proprietorship. I quickly ran into a bit of a roadblock on this part. If you want to register a common type of business where I live, the government has a bunch of easy to access resources that fully explain everything you need to do to be compliant with the law. Some businesses need special permits and licenses. For example, to open a restaurant, you have to have a health inspector come and get a permit for your signage, stuff like that. This was also during the global recession, and the government had a lot of grants and tax rebates for new small business owners that I wanted to take advantage of. Bug farm was not on any of the drop-down menus I saw. Was I a farm? Was I a pet food manufacturer? Would this qualify as a live fishing bait production? All of those business types had different rules and regulations. I had no idea what I was as a business. I also had no clue that my search for answers on this would land me smack dab in the middle of my local MLM hunnery. I joined a Facebook group titled something like Small Business Owners of Blank Area, and I think it said work from home probably. There was no mention of specific companies or particular types of businesses other than small and work from home. I figured I'd just make a post asking how to find information on starting a new small business at home in blank town, and some friendly entrepreneur would point me in the right direction. That was mistake number 1. Immediately, my inbox started to fill with countless message requests, all from MLM Huns. Some were the stereotypical copy-paste emoji abuse, but some came out of the gate with really personal questions and comments. You're really pretty. I can tell you love makeup. Are you a single mom? Did you lose your job? Do you have a husband? Does he support you enough? There were a few that passed as somewhat professional, introducing themselves as local small business owners, but by talking to them, it became very clear very quickly that I was only getting responses from MLM reps. I wasn't getting any legit responses to my posts, so I figured I would delete it and reword it. This was mistake number 2. This time I was specific and I foolishly asked, quote, where can I find information on registering an actual small business in this town? I'm not sure if or what permits I need. Please don't message me about MLM scams. Thanks in advance. I'll just give everyone a moment to collectively facepalm at the fact that I personally attacked over 200 brainwashed cult members at the same time during a cult meeting. Along with even more sales pitches, I was inundated with diatribes full of hate and vitriol. How dare I attack or defame all of these struggling single moms who are just trying to support their families during this global recession? This isn't a scam. Scams are illegal. I'm not a criminal. Nobody cares if you don't want to be successful. Stop being jealous. I was shocked. I'm really trying to picture the situation right now. So you said there's roughly 2,000 members of this work from home small business Facebook group, and perhaps unbeknownst to you at this time, it is composed of probably mostly MLM reps, and you're making this big post like, don't come at me if you're in an MLM scam. Oh my gosh, I can just imagine like the notification popping up on everyone's phone and them just being like horrified that one could even call it a scam. Pyramid schemes are illegal. I'm not in a scam. You most definitely single-handedly offended all of those MLM reps with one post. But as we know, as we talk about a lot on this channel, yes, pyramid schemes, they are illegal. But on the other hand, just because something is illegal doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There are plenty of crimes out there that are against the law, and that doesn't mean that they just don't get committed. And there's absolutely such thing as product-based pyramid schemes. Plenty of MLMs have been investigated and have been found to be pyramid schemes. The point being that that there's just not the resources to investigate and go after legally all of these thousands of MLM companies that are out there. It's very, very unlikely that each of these companies will be looked at one by one down the list and found to be pyramid schemes. Remember that just because they haven't been looked at, investigated, taken to court, sued, that doesn't mean that they're not operating as an illegal pyramid scheme, as a product-based pyramid scheme. It can exist, it does exist, and just because, quote, pyramid schemes are illegal, which is an argument MLM reps love to fall back on, does not automatically mean that their MLM company can't possibly be a pyramid scheme. I did not know that things went beyond borderline illegal business models, overpriced products, and annoying sales pitches from girls I haven't seen since grade 3. The more I scrolled through the group, the more I realized that every single post was MLM recruitment or MLM product sales. There was a lot of activity that heavily implied sign up with me and I will sign up with you type arrangements that I'm sure go against some company policies. This group was for people who were already in multiple MLMs or were entertaining the idea. Yikes! Yeah, so it is definitely not what you thought you were getting yourself into. I found myself arguing with some of these women because I knew they weren't making much, if anything. They must know that they aren't actually business owners. How could they not? I just wanted to reach through the monitor and shake some sense into these ladies. Like, can't you see this is all a scam? Through speaking with them and hearing the stories you share on your channel, I've come to realize that this is a cult in almost every sense of the word. Narcissists at helm, victims at their mercy. Thank you again for all you do. Please say hi to your kitty. He is very cute. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have about 30,000 crickets to go feed. What I love about your story is that you had this experience prior to consuming anti-MLM content. You had that gut feeling that something wasn't right here, but at that time you probably didn't understand all of the inner workings of the industry and all these complex nuances and how they all fit together and how they quite honestly do prove these companies to be very cult-like. And I think this is super cool that you're reporting that after the fact, after you've kind of learned those things, it helped you make more sense of what happened earlier. And I think there's a lot of people out there who fall into this exact same boat. They have some kind of encounter, they're not really sure what it is, it doesn't feel quite right, but they're pretty neutral on it, right? Oh yeah, my grandma sells Pampered Chef, what of it? Oh yeah, girls from my high school are in Arbonne and Monet, that's cool, good for them, not for me. And it's not until you really start to dig into it that people realize, oh my goodness, there's a lot more going on here than I initially thought. These are a lot more damaging than I initially thought. And as you're explaining, you were able to look back on it and be like, okay, I understand the frame of mind they were in. I understand why they were so angry with me saying no MLMs. I understand how they were so deeply offended by my one seemingly straightforward and rational post. And that's really cool to hear. And that's a massive goal of these videos, to read these stories, to educate on the topic, and help people understand a little bit better what really is going on within the industry of multi-level marketing, with the end goal being hopefully people will leave their MLMs or hopefully they will avoid them altogether. Thank you so much for your story and best of luck with your bug farm business. That is so cool. Something that's very much a niche business, but there's absolutely a need for it. I think that's awesome. This story says, hi Hannah, I just found your channel a few days ago and I've already gone down the rabbit hole of your MLM videos. Thank you for doing this. I am so tired and sick of it. I've got a story. For some background information, I grew up in an abusive home and my weight has always been a struggle. Also, my parents joined a homeschool cult when I was small, and so I grew up in a cult and now recognize the signs of one. But also relevant is that due to my background, I knew homeschooling my own children wasn't something I would be able to do, yet public school was so villainized in the cult that I was raised in that I was already in steady panic attacks leading up to my oldest son starting school. I was already dealing with feelings of being a failure as a mother. Okay, so to the story. My oldest son has autism and severe ADHD. He was 3 when we started the process of him getting diagnosed. My closest friend at the time was the now ex-wife of my husband's best friend. They didn't have children, but they invested a lot into my, at the time, 2 children. Let's call them John and Kate. Kate seemed very supportive of all we were dealing with our son, but at some point she got hooked on doTERRA. I'll save everyone the horrible things she said under the guise of caring, but she played into my fears and feelings of failure to make me feel even worse about my mothering, and that all these miracle oils would cure my son. We ended up purchasing the starter pack out of guilt, but also a hope and a prayer that it would fix my son. I need to stop the story right here though to say this. Autistic children are not broken. We tell tell him that his brain just works a little differently than a lot of other people's, but there isn't anything wrong with him. Sorry, end of rant on that, just had to get that out. No, I'm happy that you did say that actually, because there was a missed opportunity on my part in a previous story of something very similar to this. A mother who had an autistic son, and there was an essential oil rep trying to pitch the oils as a cure or a way to fix. And I missed the opportunity to make this point, but a lot of people pointed it out in the comments, which I'm so grateful for, that autism is not something that needs to be fixed or cured. In fact, I got an email from somebody who has been diagnosed with ADHD and autism, and she wrote this beautifully crafted email, and I want to read you a little excerpt from that. She says, I personally dislike the word disorder in relation to ADHD and autism because without capitalistic pressures to constantly be productive, I just think differently. The way I think is not wrong or bad, it's just different from what has been set as the societal norm. Both ADHD and autism are considered disabilities by the ADA and categorized as neurodivergence, and I personally feel that these are better descriptions than disorders. And personally, I love that description, and it really helps me understand how ADHD and autism are not things that need to be fixed or need to be cured. What we need is for people to understand them better so that we can support those people better, and we can therefore provide more resources and more support. Anyway, I continued on your little rant because I do think that's a really important point that I didn't take the opportunity to elaborate on previously, so thank you for giving me that opportunity to talk about it now. Anyways, back to the story. Both he and I are very sensitive to smells, and we both get headaches very easily. Obviously, this meant no good for the oils. No matter what I did, we both would get crippling headaches and he would just sob. I stopped it all really quickly, only to be met with, "You aren't using them correctly." Kate finally got pissed at my avoidance and tried to ruin my husband and John's friendship. Thankfully, that ended up not working, and after jumping around to I think it was about 6 different MLMs after that, and throwing John into $1,000 of debt, she left. It has taken years for John to recover from that financially. He is still our best friend, and our youngest son bears his name. The other actual story I have involves Norwex. There was a former friend, let's call her Nancy, that I was in Bible study with for several years. Our kids were friends, and we met at a lot of playgrounds and such for the kids to play while we visited. At some point, she joined Norwex, and I went to her launch party to try and support her. I bought a couple of small things, but that was it. After not buying anything else from her for a while, our playdates and meetups gradually decreased. Not too long after, I found out I was pregnant for the 4th time. My husband and I were done after our 3rd, and the 4th pregnancy was not wanted or welcome. At 9 weeks, we then found out it was twins. Now, my husband and I have struggled majorly financially for our entire marriage. My husband went to school to be a teacher, and then he couldn't find a job and ended up working for a major cell phone provider, which didn't pay well. He's now left that to work in IT for our county. Due to my background, I never finished school, and with no degree, I cannot get a job that pays enough to even cover childcare, much less anything over that. So I've stayed home with the kids. So not only did we not want more children for other reasons, we couldn't afford 2 more. In walks Nancy once more. She knew all of this information and she used it. Under the guise of a baby shower, she got me back in her home to try and get me to sign up as a consultant. She pushed the products on me that she knew we couldn't afford. Under the, well, with 2 new babies that will be crawling around, surely you want the best and most natural cleaning products. Again, I felt so pressured into buying that I got 2 of the cheapest but most useful of the products I could find in her catalog. She kept hitting me up with the line that I could finally help provide for my family if I joined her, and kept implying that it was our own fault we were poor because I was choosing to turn away this amazing opportunity. I held my ground and she pretty much disappeared from my life. What's ridiculous though is that if you did buy into Norwex, if you did actually join, that would not be a good financial decision for you. That would be a good financial decision for her, but her basically placing the blame on you because you're not choosing to help your situation by joining Norwex is completely unfounded and irrational, because as we all know, most people who join an MLM actually lose money. It's actually a terrible financial decision for them, and it's pretty ironic that it's pitched to people as the way out of their poor financial situation, when in fact if they do join, it pretty much plays out the exact opposite way. Other than these stories though, I'm surrounded by it. They prey on stay-at-home moms, and it's obvious from my Facebook. I'm pretty sure there is someone selling something from most of them all over my Facebook. Plexus is the other big one here, and as someone that's always struggled with weight, the message that these people send out is depressing and offensive. I've lost so many friends over these things, it's stupid. But also, somewhere along the line, I started getting these weird feelings about all of them and telling my husband that they sounded as culty as what I was raised in. If you question the system, you are the bad guy. if something goes wrong with the products, it's because you as the user are doing something wrong. The MLMs work so hard to remove or hide anything negative, and they are full of toxic positivity. So anyway, thanks for reading. Absolutely, and as someone who did grow up in a cult like you did, I would say that's pretty telling that you're noticing all of these similarities and these parallels, because that's what I'm trying to say all the time through my videos, is that the resemblance between MLMs and cults is uncanny. And so to have you, as someone who has had experience in an actual cult, confirm that, also recognize the similarities, I think that's super powerful. So thank you for sending in this story. And with that, my friends, it's all the stories I have for you for this MLM horror stories video. Again, if you have your own you'd like to send to me, check out the description box. There are instructions down there. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next one real soon.